Welcome back to the RC Wrench Bench. We are back with the RC10SC6.2 differential project. If you watched the other couple of videos out there, we needed to do a full-on rebuild of the differential because when I opened it up, I found that the cross pin, I was running a 2-gear with a single cross pin, obviously, and it had broke. And so after finding that, also found that the inside of the aluminum diff cover was, the anodizing had rubbed off, and I'm not sure what caused that. So based on the condition of those components, we decided to do a full-on rebuild. Got those parts in the mail today. I had the out drives from previously. That's what I really needed to start with, 91785. And I got a new aluminum diff cover, which is 91781. And then the regular 6.1 rebuild kit wasn't available, but I found that Drag Race Concepts had a differential rebuild kit available at a totally reasonable price. I think it was 20 bucks or something, but it included way more than the regular associated rebuild kit. So I've never even heard of Drag Race Concepts, maybe because I don't do any drag racing, but I'm pretty impressed with the quality of parts that came in. They look really good. So Drag Race Concepts, for them, that's DRC495. So I'm sure that this is compatible with anything else that runs the B6.1 differential. And like I said, I'm going to go back to a 4-gear. I would prioritize a little bit of durability over ultimate performance. I'm not sure that my driving skill is at a point where a 2-gear versus a 4-gear is really going to make a massive difference for me. So I'm going to stick with a 4-gear and hopefully get a little bit of durability out of it. When I put this together, I'm going to use a thinner fluid, obviously, than when I was running the 2-gear. I was using 40K. I'm going to drop it down to 15K. Typically run a smaller, more technical track. So we'll see how that feels. All right, we're going to get started here. The only part that we're not really replacing is the actual gear diff housing, the main gear. That was in fine shape, so we're going to stick with that. And anytime I'm building a differential, I always use the associated green slime to help out with some of the O-rings that go in. So new out drive, I'm just going to stick a little bit of slime on there. And then the larger of the O-rings that come with the kit go right inside that little channel in the diff housing. We'll slide that right through there, no problem at all. Yep, nice. And then the first piece to go on once inside the diff is the very large flat washer. So that's going to go in there first. And if you have some small pliers, these very small needle nose pliers are great for working on diffs. So that just pushes that right back down in there. And then the pin goes in next. And we'll just try to spin that so it's working with one of the channels. You can slide the pin in using one of those channels a little bit easier. There we go, right through there, just perfect. So you can probably see in there. Just get that pin in there, mostly centered. Great. And then after the pin, one of the main gears goes in. And then you're just going to make sure that seats right down on top of that pin. There you go. And when that's seated, you can see the very top of the outdrive shaft is pretty much equal in height with that gear. All right, so we're just gonna set that aside for now. And then the process essentially repeats itself through the other side. A little slime on the outdrive. A little bit of slime on the O-ring. This is just on the cover side. There you go. I kind of like turn it just a little bit as it goes through. After that goes through, large washer. And then the pin. A little bit easier on this side since you're not working down inside of that gear. But again, there's that little channel on the side of the cover that helps you get that in there. So get that pretty much centered. And then there we go. That gear sits on there just like that. All right, next up we're gonna build the spider gears. And so these little tiny O-rings. These have got to be one of the most annoying RC parts. I don't even know if you can see that. Probably won't focus on it. But the tiny little O-rings. And that goes inside this little channel inside of the small gear. And then that cross pin goes right through there. And then washer, just like that. Put the washer on there. Maybe that will help keep that tiny O-ring in place. There we go. And it looks like in the kit they included an extra one of those tiny O-rings. I don't know if that was just by accident with packing or if they recognize you might drop one. These O-rings seem to be a little more flexible than the associated ones, which are a little bit rigid. The small gears do fit kind of tightly on the cross pin. I'm not sure that I like the feel of that. Maybe when the diff breaks in it will be just fine, but it's not a total freedom of movement there. All right, so now that we have those two sets built, then what I tend to do, I use my parts tray here because it has this nice center section. I'll put a little fluid in the bottom, and then I'll put the gears in, and then I'll top off the fluid. So again, this is associated 15K. And that will just allow that first layer of oil to get down there in the bottom. And then you know the cross pins, since we're not dealing with a single piece plastic or composite one, they have a little channel and each pin just rests into that channel. Just gonna make sure the pin goes right into the corresponding channel in that main gear and settles right down in. I left the flat spot up, just like that. Might zoom in just a little bit. And then I'm going to put the corresponding one in with the flat spot facing down. And I'm just going to use my pliers to make sure it's actually fully seated in there. Give that outdrive just a little twist, and you can see that's worked right in perfectly. That's not focusing the way I want it to. There we go. All right, and then most instructions for building gear diffs will say to add fluid to the top of the cross pins, and so that's what we're going to do. And I'm going to give this a little bit of time to sit, and we'll come back after that's had a chance to do so. All right, the diff oil's had a few minutes to sit, and we're using fairly thin oil. I don't see any bubbles or anything like that. I took the included gasket and just wiped a little layer of diff oil on there to just kind of moisten that before I put it on. So we're gonna lay the gasket down just so you know how it's gonna go, lining up the holes. And then we're going to put the cover on. We're going to just kind of move a little bit quickly and put that right on there. Usually that diff gear will stay on. Sometimes they have a tendency to slide out. So we're going to put these two together and then screw it down. There we go. Those holes are lining up perfectly, so that's good. And we're going to use the screws from before, and just like any time we're tightening anything that is, you know, part of a square or a rectangle, we're just going to snug things down a little bit and then go back in a cross pattern to tighten them all the way. That way you don't end up with anything binding. After we get this put together, then we'll install it back in the truck. All right, we're gonna tighten that one, skip across to the other side, fully tighten that one, move one screw over, fully tighten that one, and then skip across to the other side for the last screw. There we go. That looks good. All right, let's see how it feels. Feels pretty smooth for a gear diff. I'll be curious about the durability. I don't have any races with this truck for a little while, so I won't be able to report back on it. But after we get a few races, I'll take it apart and see how it looks. But it seems pretty smooth to me. All right, thanks for tuning in at the RC Wrench Bench. If you have any suggestions or comments or experiences that you've had with associated gear diffs or the Drag Race Concepts products, go ahead and throw it in the comments. Thank you.